seats on the front row. Do you want to come sit here with us on the first row?
I've done my call up there.
Jill, are these taken? No. Oh, I guess. So closer to the back. If I can hold up a wall, I don't have Oh, see. Oh, I was like, it's gone again. I got it. I'm not one now I see why they made a row back here. I'm like, why'd they make a row back here? I have break on my road. Spicy VA.
Because I'm like,
I'll start early. I'd like to welcome everyone to council meetings this evening. All 2015 council members are present. That'll switch here in a little while, so we'll get to that. We've asked council member Cindy Boyd to lead us in a pledge, and then council member Sid Lamone to offer opening remarks.
Everyone stand and repeat after me. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our good Holy Father, we thank you for the opportunity we have to come to council meeting tonight, to be able to learn how we can better serve the people of our city. We are thankful for the opportunity we have to serve and that we can work together with the residents of Belleville. We thank you for the time and effort that members of our community and council members and the staff give to make this a better place for all. Please bless that we can go throughout the night with an open mind and open heart, that we can respect one another's views and be able to speak in a civil and respectful way to one another. Please bless that we will be able to strive to work together this year on the many issues facing our city, and that we can strive to be good examples to our neighboring communities and to honor our heritage and those that have come before us, to be able to make a path in the city for us at this time. We love you and we say these things in the name of my son, Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Okay, on the approval of tonight's agenda, we've had a request to move the open session to after item 7C, so that we can take care of the appointments first. I think a lot of families specifically come for that purpose. Are there any other changes?
I don't know if you still have 11B on your agenda for this review. Would you take it up? The next one, take care of.
So 11B 2016-02, you want that off? Or is it different? Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's not there. Any other changes?
Is it just item 7C before or 7A?
7A, B, and C.
Yes, and okay.
Yeah, if we could do the appointments first and then, okay. All right, with those changes, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda by moving the open session to after item 7C and otherwise maintaining the agenda as written.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben and a second by Cindy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next on our agenda is items 6A and B. These are consent items. That means that the council had an opportunity to review them prior to the meeting. And there's no need to go over the detail here unless anyone has questions on the paid vouchers.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent items as published.
I'll second it.
Motion by Cindy, second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We're now going to move on to item 7A, and this is to administer the oath of office to our new council members. In Walker. Okay. With that, I think we're going to bid farewell to Cindy. And let me just state for the record that I have thoroughly enjoyed working with her over the many years that we've worked together. No, we haven't always agreed on everything, but that's what makes it healthy. We've been able to work together to strive for middle ground and to come up with what is good for the citizens. And that's the critical thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much. And I just want to say it very quick, you don't have to listen to me anymore, at least tonight, but I just want to give a big thanks to everyone, for the staff, you're in good hands. Our city's moving in a very positive direction, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of it for the time that I have. But it's a new era, it's a new time, and everybody needs to be involved and voice your opinion and be positive and move in a great direction. And Lynn, I'm excited for you. It's great. And thank you to my family, I love them. And I love their support and all of your support. I'm actually always very humbled to even think that I was elected 3 times. So, by the citizens of this community, and I give thanks to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before you sit down, we just have a little something that someone has prepared for you. So if you just want to take a seat just for a second.
Listen, Cindy, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, Cindy.
If you need me, go no matter where you are, no matter how far.
Don't worry, Cindy,
Just call my name, there in a hurry.
You don't have to worry, 'cause Cindy, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. From that day on, I made a vow, I'll be there where you want me, some way, somehow. It's easy, there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, babe. No wind, no rain, or winter's cold can't stop me singing. No, no singing, 'cause you belong trouble only there on the double. Just say I was singing. Ow! Woo! If you ever need a helping hand, I'll be there on the double just as fast as I can. There ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you. There's something know that there ain't no mountain high enough, ain't no valley low enough, ain't no river wide enough to keep me from getting to you, Cindy.
Wow, I wish I had that kind of talent. I'm afraid not this year. Lynn, do you want to come up? At the same time.
That's not ready for me.
Maybe in 100.
Raise your right arms. I state your name.
I, Gary Walker,
Solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States,
Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of this state,
the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
That's right, this is a real one. Okay.
Just a very, right, when you want to be here. Raise your right arm. I state your name. I, Cynthia Moan, do solemnly affirm that I will support, obey and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the state, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
For those that don't know, this is Sid's husband. His name's Ryan.
We're great. I, Eric Jensen,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support,
that I will support,
obey, and defend
obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state,
the Constitution of the state,
and that I will discharge
and I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Okay, congratulations to all three of you. It's good to serve with you. At this time, we need to elect a mayor pro tem. Mayor pro tem serves in the capacity of mayor when the mayor is unable or unwilling to exercise their responsibilities. So I'll entertain a motion at this time.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate and elect Diana Anderson as mayor pro tem.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric and a second by Ben for Diana Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Diana, do we swear in or anything?
No.
Just swear at him? Congratulations, thank you.
And the gavel obviously covered, so.
Okay, and at this time, we are required by statute to consider for appointment each year our city treasurer and our city recorder. So, I'll entertain a motion at this time. City treasurer would be Karen Besant. Where are you, Karen? There you are. Okay. And city recorder would be Kathy Cresser.
I'll make the motion that we appoint, we consider for the appointment of the city treasurer and city recorder Karen Besant and Kathy Cresser. And I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sid and a second by Diana. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, thanks. And do we need to swear them? Okay, congratulations. Karen, thank you. Okay, we'll now have an open session. This is a time for anyone to address the council on an item that's not a public hearing or not open for discussion or that's not on the agenda that you want to raise at this time. So please come up and state your name and address. And if there's a lot of you, please be considerate of everyone else's time.
Jennifer Baptista, 32 North, 1300 East. I wanted to address the council on the possible new procedures for our city council. I have attended almost all the meetings, and I have a perception of how the meetings have gone. I know each council member has a perception of how the meetings have gone. So before I addressed the issue and actually formally addressed you on this issue, I wanted to do some research. So that's what I did. I went over all of last year's meetings and spent a couple days doing research. I have all the minutes except for the 3 that haven't been voted in yet. So all of the December meetings, I don't have the minutes. I have the audio, but I don't have the minutes for. So in my discovery, I found that my perception was more accurate than I actually thought it was. So I just wanted to give you some factual information about how the city meetings have actually ran. There's been a total of 40 meetings. The average of those 40 meetings, we put them all together, where they averaged about 3 hours and 27 minutes apiece. There was no meeting less than an hour long. There was 6 meetings between an hour and 2 hours. There was 11 meetings between 2 hours and 3 hours. There was 13 meetings between 3 hours and 4 hours. And there was 6 meetings between 4 hours and 5 hours. And over 5 hours, there were 4 meetings. There was 291 agenda items. And that averaged about a little over 7 agenda items per meeting. There was 89 comments, people that stood up in open session over the whole year. That averaged about little over 2 people for open session each meeting. Discussion comments, there was 280 discussion comments, which is averaged about 6 comments per meeting. The total public comments was 297. There were 45 presentations through the year and 45 discussion items through the year. The total length of all our meetings, 134 hours and 9 minutes. Now, in the comments, those numbers do not account for the 3 agendas that I didn't have records of, so those would be a little bit higher. The main meetings that took the most time was 2 public safety committee meetings. One was 4 hours and 18 minutes, one was 5 hours and 20 minutes. The public comments during that time amounted to 1 hour and 2 minutes and 1 hour and 52 minutes. Now, in that account, I could not itemize each person and how long they talked because it was discussion. So most of the people that got up either got a response from a council member or staff member, or a challenge, or an explanation. So it was too hard for me to determine approximately how much time the speaking time is. But over all of the meetings and assessments that I've done, the actual talking of the public has been in the 3-minute range. Some of the discussions with that individual had ranged all the way up to 15 minutes per person. The next item was a budget hearing, which was 4 hours and 41 minutes. There was 2 hours and 35 minutes worth of comment discussions with the public. And with the public meetings, the one that was 4 hours, there was 23 public comments. The one that was 5 hours, there was 22 comments. With the budget meeting, there was 10 comments. The 400 North Sewer discussion, there was 2 of them. One was 5 hours and 36 minutes. 38 minutes of that was discussion with the public, only 5 comments. The other one was 4 hours and 52 minutes with 45 minutes worth of conversations with the public, and that had 12 comments from the public. The R-rated movies was the one that actually had the longest amount of time with the public. It was a 3 hour and 33-minute meeting, and 2 hours and 11 minutes of it were discussions with the public, and it had 24 comments. The rezone was another one, was 4 hours and 5 minutes, and that was a 56-minute conversation with the public. There was 7 comments. And the accessory apartments was 4 hours and 46 minutes, and it had 1 hour and 54 minutes of discussion with the public and 25 comments. During those meetings, every one of those meetings either had 1 or more presentations along with that meeting, and several of them had more than 1 discussion item on the agenda. We had one open session meeting that there was no comments on anything in the agenda. It was just strictly open session minutes. And that meeting was 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it was 37 minutes in open session comments. And there was 13 open session comments. And those open session comments it was in January when people were talking about the Public Safety Committee. So all of the meetings that had extensive amount of time spent discussion with the public were either public hearings or discussion items, which most of those were promoted by the city to have comments to come in. So on an average, our average meetings, this is not happening because of the public. What's happening is almost all of our meetings have multiple presentations and or discussions along with them. The presentations are actually what's taking up most of the time in our public hearings. So the length of the time is not solely due because of the public comment. And the public comment have been dialogue where people have been able to voice questions, get comments, get answers, voice concerns and give, council a different point of view that they don't normally get. A lot of the people that comment, sometimes that disagree with a political view of some of the council, that's our only voice to say the other side, to state the other thoughts and the other opinions of how we feel and how we see things. If you only hear from yourselves, or you only hear from the people that have your own political view, you will never see what other thoughts and options and possibilities are, and other concerns. And I know for a fact that a lot of things that have been brought up in discussion has caused continuations and other, research, because there were things that were discovered in those conversations that nobody was aware of and thought of before the decisions were made. So my suggestion, and I wanted to make sure I gave you suggestions, was if you choose to go down and change the rules of the meetings, I don't see that what you're trying to do is going to change the time with the public, because the public really is not taking that much time up. What you're eliminating is discussion with the public. And if that's what you want to do, then that's probably what you're going to do by eliminating the public. Because most of it was discussion with the public, not the public actually doing all the speaking. So I would really, voice a concern there. Two, the presentations are never public comments. Some of them are important and some of them are just ceremonial and celebration. My recommendation, if you choose to have a work session only meeting, that maybe you put those presentations on that meeting and not on the official meeting that the public does their business with. The public hearings and all the resolutions, ordinances, zoning, master plans, and general plan items, I would really hope that you would make those public hearing items or discussion items so the public can have a say in how their city is run and be able to voice an opinion in that. And with the discussions, because they are discussions and you're not voting on them, those also too can be moved to a work session, and that would give everybody time to digest what was discussed at those work sessions before you have another public hearing or a public meeting to actually vote on it. So that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else?
Blaine Thatcher, 120 North, 1400 East. I'm assuming, are you going to allow, I guess you should ask the question, are you going to allow public comment in tonight's meeting with the agenda items?
What I will do is ask the council on those items if they'd like to allow public comment, but the agenda is not published that way.
Not, so it is designed currently not to allow public comment during the agenda items, okay?
Well, item 9, to be clear, item 9, those are public hearings.
The public hearings have to be,
Okay.
but with respect to the items that are not listed as public hearing, in the past, we've had comments and opportunities for discussion. Those have not been listed.
Okay. So how is the public to know if they can comment on an item that you're discussing and or going to make a decision on?
Okay. I imagine that the reason the ones that say public hearing have public hearing is because that's required by law for them to be public hearings. And the others do not require public input in order for them to be discussed or decided upon. That doesn't.
Maybe
that
a
does not
vote or a
mean-
decision that,
Sorry?
yeah, there may be a vote or a decision that would perhaps expend funds.
Correct.
Okay.
So the rest of the items that are on here, for example, the presentation with St. John's Properties, and then moving down to section 10 and section 11, and from then forward, they're not listed as any kind of public comment. I believe this follows with the straw poll that we took the first time we discussed the changes in the procedures for a council meeting. And so that was carried forward.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll make my comments in public session then.
Okay, thank you.
Open session. I believe this is a pretty important meeting. We have just heard the oath that was sworn to by our new council members, and I believe part of fulfilling your duty with fidelity part of that is listening to and dialoguing with citizens in this meeting on public record when decisions are made, particularly decisions that expend taxpayer funds. This is the only meeting that those types of decisions are made in.
Correct.
And I believe that to restrict the citizens' ability to discuss with you, our elected representatives, at the time you are discussing and making decisions about a particular item, to restrict that is probably a circumvention of, I think, the design and plan of our governmental system. So I would like to encourage and recommend as strongly as I can that this council consider not restricting the citizens' ability to speak and dialogue with you in a public meeting, on public record, when you are discussing and debating and making key decisions for us as citizens. I think to exclude that or restrict that, I think does the citizens a disservice, and I think eliminates some of the ability to hold our elected representatives accountable for the decisions that they make on our behalf. And so I would just strongly encourage that you consider this one carefully and be willing to listen to the citizens when you make key decisions. Thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, not argumentative, the decision to allow public comment on items that are not public hearings was brought about by a request from Jennifer Baptiste, and I want to say it was a year ago, right about a year ago, that following the previous election, that request was made so that we could have that kind of dialogue. And so we've gone an entire year trying that, and I think it's now up to the council, this new council that's been seated, to decide whether or not they want to continue that. But the policy has never been that this is allowed, and so there's nothing being taken away, and I hope that's a clarification
No,
that
that's
we
fine.
understand.
That's fine, and I just am trying to express my feelings about, I don't think it's even a wise idea to limit the citizens to just an open session that is distanced from the issues upon which you're going to discuss. I think in true representative form that the public's comments should be as closely associated with the discussion items that you're making decisions on as possible. And so I think that discussion should happen with each agenda item, regardless of whether it's required to be a public hearing or not. And I think, as I think the numbers that Jennifer just presented show, that that's not unreasonable, that it doesn't extend the meetings unreasonably, and I think it's fair to say that it could be done that way, whether it has in the past or should have been or whatever. I just think that is an appropriate way to handle these discussion items in the one meeting where these decisions are made.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Melissa Finch, 1061 East, 1010 North in Pleasant Grove. Having worked for state government for over 30 years and attended many meetings in that period of time, not to mention probably every council meeting in our county, I have never, ever been in a meeting where there have not been rules of decorum, which really have been, except for Pleasant Grove in this past year. And I appreciate Jennifer's research on the subject, because I think it gives credence to what I'm suggesting, is that we do have rules of decorum for our meetings, for our discussions, and for our decisions. That way we can move forward in implementing a lot of those decisions that we put on the back burner for continued discussion. So my suggestion is, whatever the council decides to adopt as rules of decorum, we follow those, and for those of us as residents that don't want to come and spend 4 hours in a meeting, that we come and we learn what we're gonna be doing, we give our measured input on that, and we use other forms of communication to talk, discuss, and be a part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. I noticed the council was taking notes, so I'm sure when we get to that agenda item, it'll be good. At this time, we'll close the open session, and we'll come back here to agenda item number 8, and we have a presentation by St. John's Properties. Daniel, were you going to?
You don't want Alright. Well, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Congratulations, Eric, Sid, Lynn. The offering and subjection of your time and resources and opinions to the service of your people is very honorable, and I wish you nothing but the best. My observation is your challenges are great, and I can't vote here, but I give you my vote of confidence that you will rise to the challenge and you'll leave this city better than you found it. So, congratulations to those individuals. Thank you for those people who, over the last couple of months, extended kind invitations for us to be here tonight. And I'm self-imposing a 10-minute limit here so that you guys can move on to what obviously is more important business, and then we need to get Eric home to bed. So, it's my understanding that the invitations that we've received to be here tonight kind of stem from two things. I'd like to address those two things here briefly. And the first being our decision late last year to put Valley Grove on hold. And then the second item is what I believe is a sincere desire by the city of Pleasant Grove to have an attractive and vibrant, tax-generating business community here in Pleasant Grove that we have the ability and the desire to deliver for you. So let me make some brief statements on those two items, and then I'm going to be more than happy to just answer any questions you have and let you move on. But in late October, we elected to put Valley Grove on hold for an indefinite amount of time, and it was shared with me that after that decision, many people had made some assumptions as to the reasons for our decision, and that created a storm of confusion, I hear, and maybe some mixed narratives on our positions and what we were doing. And I want to apologize for that. I lacked the vision in the amount of derision that decision would cause, and I apologize for that. I can't apologize for our decision because it was the best decision for us as a company, but I do apologize for any confusion or lack of communication I may have exhibited in sharing that decision. The reason for the decisions, it became evident end of last year that I had missed the mark. I'd maybe fallen a little short of some expectations, and as I observed it, we kind of had two paths. One path was to continue to kick and push and punch and claw for a project that, you know, our legal counsel feels meets all the code, or we could step back, take a couple breaths, and reevaluate our investments into, more generally, the state of Utah. And, you know, we did that confidently knowing that, you know, over a period of 3, 5, 7, 10 years, the opportunity would represent itself at the right time to discuss the future of Valley Grove and that project. But at the time, and still to this day, there's a lot of moving pieces in a puzzle I'm trying to figure out. And Valley Grove is one piece of that puzzle. And so I apologize it's got consumed in some other things, but the scale of what we have an opportunity to do is only increasing. I was given, this was all about the time, you know, last October, and things were coming to a head. My boss gave me the privilege and the task of possibly dispensing over $250 million, $250 million into the state of Utah. And at that time, it felt like the right thing to do wasn't to continue to come down here and try to define curvature and brick and terraneo and things like that. There would be a time for those discussions, but we needed an opportunity to reevaluate. So I hope that from the horse's mouth is clarification on why we made that decision, and I'm happy to share with you some of our plans going forward. But before I do that, I want to just express appreciation for the kindness and the expressions of cooperation that many of you have shared with us for ever since we showed up early last year. I believe, and I've said this before, I think you have one of the finest city administrators I've ever worked with in Scott Darrington, and I'm sure you know that also, but I want to express that. And over the last couple months, you know, Ben and Eric, Mayor Daniels have all reached out in open communication to see what could be done to bring some development to Pleasant Grove. With that, that's my brief statement. There might not be any questions. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. But I thought if you're interested, we've taken an opportunity to take your feedback, your input, what I think were some recommendations, and say if Valley Grove were to move forward, what changes could we do? How could we implement that feedback? And I'm happy to share with you. We're not asking for any approval. I'm just here to share. If you're interested. So,
Council?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, please.
any questions? We good?
You only took 5 minutes, so keep going.
Oh dear. Well, Eric, we're gonna get you home early.
Thank you.
So what we did, actually, why don't we start, Cameron? Do you have the rendering? Let's start with the retail building. I don't think there was as much concern with the retail building. Yeah, just Vanna White for us a little bit. I went back and I said, Cameron, help us out. They want some parapets, they want some architectural features, they want some awnings. This is not a final product rendering, but it shows a concept that we're looking at. It's just one side of the building. That would be at the entrance of the business park. There's kind of a pendulum cube up there in that tower, but that's just a concept that we're looking at, a retail concept that we'd be happy to bring back to the city of Pleasant Grove. Questions, comments on that?
How different is that from the one that you presented in October? I apologize.
Not much, but dramatically. We had parapets on the parking lot side, which is quite honestly the entrance. That's where if you drive down a lot of streets, you look at the back of retail buildings because nobody comes in them off of the street. So the recommendation we heard was to dress up the street side a little bit, which is fair. So we put the tower on it, but not much has changed. We added a parapet on the back side. It started to get a little heavy with too many awnings, so we turned back the awnings a little bit. I think it looks dramatically different, but it's the same building.
Does it have a major impact in the percentage of glass versus stonework and metal and those kinds of questions?
On the retail building, you're getting a whole lot more stone, quite honestly, because you've got more surface space. The glass is maxed out because you have to maintain certain columns for shear and structural purposes, and so.
Looks good.
Thank you, Eric.
I think it, looks fine. I don't think we have a problem with the other one either for the retail.
Okay. Well, there are going to be a lot of, in this particular project, there are 4 retail buildings, and you don't want them to all be identical, so they'll probably have a theme, but some variation in that. So.
Some customization, signage, etc. for depending on tenants.
Yeah, we'll probably alter that tower a little bit from building to building, and the shapes of the parapets and shapes of awnings. All right, let's move on to the office building, which is, I think, where most of the recommendations came from. Let's
A or B?
let's do A. Is that A?
I think that one's B.
Now, Cameron is my artist, but we're limited a little bit by the software. Okay, so Eric had brought some pictures that he had left with me showing these architectural features on the corner with larger parapets and things of that nature, metal crowns. So with building A, what we did is, obviously you're just looking at one corner of it, but we increased the amount of stone, and for reference, the stone is, I get a little teary-eyed talking about it because I like it a lot. Austin, can you pick that up?
Just hold it like
Just
that.
teasing. It's that there. It's a porcelain that we mocked up off of the Banana Republic that's at City Creek. So all of the stone that you would see on the building, on building A, would be that. It's a porcelain stone.
So is it intended to show like the white part would be this
Correct.
on the front of the building?
Yeah, on that corner.
Okay. The
Stuff
other's
that
red
doesn't
brick,
look
right?
like brick.
Can you show that picture?
Pardon me?
Stuff that doesn't look like brick.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Hold that up and turn it around.
What you can't see is that as you go down, one of the concerns we heard was the length of the brick runs, and so what we did was we had this a wainscot around the building, and on the columns going down the length of the building, we ran that accent stone all the way up, so it creates a visual break as your eye moves down the building, and once you get signage on it, lighting and things of that nature, it'll break it up more. But so that's office building A. Again, not wanting them to all look the same. And these 2 office buildings are the office buildings that, quite honestly, we would love to start building tomorrow if possible. This is office building B. We did a metal crown, and instead of replicating the porcelain accent to kind of bring some variation between the buildings, we did a GFRC paneling system. It's concrete, which I hear is acceptable to the code. So that fills with grout, and you see that on a lot of office buildings. And again, the same thing applies to that as you go down the building. All the columns that runs up the length of the columns all the way to the roof. And so the corners that you're seeing in those renderings, it would start to look really tacky if you put it on all 4 corners. So what we did is we went opposite corners. You're still providing some symmetry, but if you get one of those on every corner, then they lose that architectural appeal, and it starts to become part of the building. So you'd see 2 of those corners on the building.
So question for you.
Yep.
The potential business names that you just threw in, was that your concept of the office user, or is that a retail?
This is office.
Office.
This is strictly. Naturally, you will get I don't want to say retailers in there, that people that have a retail aspect. It's a showroom. I was meeting with a lighting vendor, and they're looking for a showroom, right? The disadvantage to this product type is it doesn't have the storage component of it. So usually those vendors that want a nicer showroom, and then they've got maybe a larger warehouse or something they're shipping their stuff out of. But
I thought you already had it filled, I already thought you had the vendors in there.
you thought I what?
I thought you already had the vendors in there, you're being proactive.
I'd love to. I made a resolution this year that somewhere I'm going to build one building, and I will fill one building somewhere this year. I don't want to take up much more of your time. Any questions? Anything I can do for you?
Council, anything?
I like it, man, thank you.
Thanks. I would like to build some buildings. I think we're ready. The money is burning a hole in my pocket somewhere. And what would you recommend we do next?
If I recall correctly, there's a recommendation positive from the planning commission, and then staff said that there was a question as to whether or not the design elements were met according to the design guidelines. And that's kind of where we got stopped, I think, in our discussion here. And from my understanding also, your legal counsel has also said that what you've done complies with the code. So it seems like the best approach, if you are willing, would be to come back through. You've already had a positive recommendation from the planning commission. I'm not sure the procedure on
Yeah,
this.
Tina and I were just talking, he doesn't have to go back through planning commission at this point, it's just directly to the council.
So,
We do owe staff some red lines. They provided us some red lines that we've been working on. There's still some unaddressed things, and I feel it appropriate to make sure that they have an opportunity to opine on. I think you're probably going to want them to opine on it. So if it's all right with you, what we can do is we can resubmit based off of those red lines and give staff an adequate chance to do what they need to do, and then see you guys again.
okay,
If that's all right.
we appreciate it,
I have
Daniel, thank you.
Can I ask him one question?
Please.
And maybe it's not appropriate here, I know you've been working and your boss to talk with the governor about the access, I don't know, is there any more news on that?
So, it's actually in my court. We've been not specific to access, but in transportation and access and economic development. Scott and I have asked for a meeting with the governor's office of economic development and the governor to discuss concerns that we might have with trying to develop in that quadrant, not just on Scott's property, but or St. John's, but generally because of the way traffic moves in that area. And yeah, one of the requests is going to be to modify access, at least, what would that be, north of the current right-in, right-outs that are there. You can see we're coming right off the freeway, it's not practical. Unless you wanna fly. But when you get down further, it looks like there's other opportunities for right-in and right-out.
Yeah, so we have been working close with the governor and some of his aides. I went to DC a couple weeks ago to work on this, along with some other issues with the governor in his office, and they're very much aware of the opportunity and potential here in Pleasant Grove, and I think they're all excited for something. So.
Ken, did you have a comment? Sorry. I didn't see it.
Yes, if the decision is being made to not to take the proposal back to planning commission, I think it would behoove the city process to let staff do a thorough review of what is now being proposed. In that, we pointed out fairly thoroughly last time that there were items that did not meet city code. So if they're claiming now that they do meet, we're going to need to have a review and opinion as to whether or not it does meet before city council can actually review a proposal for approval.
That's reasonable, and I think that's what Daniel was offering, St. John's, was for the staff to go ahead and do a thorough review of the new proposals and then to bring forth this recommendation, or your recommendations along with their presentation.
And maybe to add to that, if it were to turn out that staff does not find that it meets current code, our recommendation most likely will be that in order for this to go forward, there will need to be an amendment to the code approved first. And so that would be an additional process, and it would need to go back to the planning commission.
Well, as quickly as we can expedite that would be appropriate.
Well, and we'll cross that bridge if we need to.
Thank you.
Let's let them submit and we'll see where we're at.
Okay. So we have no intention to unduly delay this process. We just want to get down to the nitty gritty on, does it pass code or not? Because I think there's a disagreement, and clearly that's displaying itself again this evening.
Great.
But again, it'll be a council decision, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Love all the exhibits. Nice to see some of this stuff.
I brought the
Eric,
muscle.
you wanna help him carry out that?
18 minutes including discussion, very good. Thank you for coming back and entertaining our requests. All right, we're gonna move on to action items with public discussion. These are public hearings. Item 9A is a public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2016-1 for the proposed text amendment modifying section 1018-2 parking and design standards to remove the requirements to provide paid access to non-primary garages in the Pleasant Grove City Code. Ryan Warner is the applicant. It's right here. Yeah, is the applicant. Yep. Would it help if Ben pushed a button when you cue in?
Yeah, when I go B.
Okay, that's fine, just tell me which button to press, down, okay. Let's make it too complex for me.
Okay, B.
Didn't do anything, Ken.
Okay.
What if I press
It's on the screen.
Maybe Eric is an IT guy.
Yeah, the software update it wants to do, not the best time for that. Okay,
So would the automatic thing work now without the software update? There you go.
so it's working on that side?
Thank you. Okay, so the applicant came forward to planning commission in December with this request, and it was driven by his desire to be able to build a secondary garage on his property and without having the requirement of completing the pavement through to his backyard, which would require an additional 45 feet of paved access. He has a two-car garage, which is his primary garage that has paved access into his home. Currently, the city code just provides for that garages, without saying primary or secondary or accessory, that all garages should have a paved access. So what the proposed amendment is that the required stay for the primary garage, but that any accessory, being shown here in the gray, would not have that same pavement requirement. So that as we looked through this, discussed it on a staff level, discussed it with planning commission, we determined that there isn't a strong need to require that paved access to the secondary garage, which oftentimes is just a shed for storage purposes. It is not usually a garage that is used for regular vehicular traffic. Should it be that, then it would be the option of the property owner to provide that access, which would be beneficial to them, but not necessary to the city in that the front yard area is what we're most concerned about as far as drainage and such coming down to the road. And so, should it otherwise be a problem, then the city could work with it. But in most cases, there's not a need to impose this requirement on the secondary garage. And the secondary garage would have to be back behind the home, as currently required for accessory structures. So, we feel that this is an appropriate request. It was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission, and it's here for you tonight. Any questions?
So I have one. Accessory use not including a secondary dwelling? Or does it
No,
matter?
this is strictly for garage use.
Council, other questions?
I just don't like to get awfully expensive.
Especially if you have a deed lot and you have something like that.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, seeing no other questions, we're gonna open it up for public hearing at this time. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please come up and state your name and address.
Matt Godsey, 1026 East, 1100 North. It's really a question. The paved access is the same way in the code where there can just be 2 strips for the tires, or does it have to be the whole width of the driveway?
No, we do allow for pavers or strips.
Thank you.
So I didn't understand that this was not a restriction, it just removes the requirement. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just a general question regarding the whole thing, so that's clarified.
I know I've seen other people that have like an RV thing, place, and they don't really want to maneuver it around the driveway, they just want to push straight in. So, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Council, any further discussion?
I guess the applicant's not here tonight, Ken.
I don't see it, sorry.
Just out of curiosity, Ken, do we allow other solutions like gravel or things besides pavement?
Well, we do require pavement, but the pavement is where we have options. So it could be the pavers that come in smaller pieces connected. You could do the strips, the tire strips. But gravel, it can be problematic when it's in the front yard main access to the garage.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
And I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2016-1, first one of the year, for a proposed text amendment modifying section 10-18-2 parking and design standards to remove the requirement to provide paved access to non-primary garages in the Pleasant Grove City Code.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben and a second by Diana, by voice. Diana?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Okay. Another public hearing, ordinance number 2000, let me get this right. A public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2016-2 for a proposed text amendment to relocate the overlay sections within Title 10 to the overlay chapter to make them easier to find, moving sections 1011G, downtown mixed-use overlay, 1011H, 1011H, rural commercial overlay, and 1011I, senior housing overlay, to Chapter 13 overlays in Title 10 of the Pleasant Grove City Code. Self-imposed, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is basically a housekeeping thing. As we've, over the last couple of years, we've dealt with a couple of overlays that we have created and applied on properties. As we have been reviewing the code and determined we're not really very organized in where we have located these sections in the chapter, so that we have actually 2 different areas where overlays are being shown, and it's kind of difficult to find what you're looking for sometimes since they're not all in the same place. So it's just a housekeeping, moving the sections from one place in the code to another so that all overlays will be under the same section.
Okay. Questions for Ken? Okay, let's open it up for the public. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please come up and state your name and address. there's no prescribed time that we wait, just it's uncomfortable. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to here. Council, further questions or discussion?
Seems like it's just a housekeeping, very straightforward.
Okay.
Comfortable with it.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt an ordinance 2016-2 for a proposed text amendment to relocate the overlay sections within Title 10 to the overlay chapter to make them easier to find, moving sections 10, 11G, downtown mixed use overlay, 10, 11H, rural commercial overlay, and 10, 11I, senior housing overlay to chapter 13 overlays in Title 10 of the Pleasant Grove City Code.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Diane and a second by Eric. By voice, Ben,
Yes.
Sid,
Yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Diana.
Yes.
Motion is unanimous, thank you. Okay, and then, item 9C is a public hearing to consider for adoption an ordinance 2016-3 for a proposed text amendment to change from requiring completion of all infrastructure improvements prior to the issuance of a building permit to completion prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Modifying sections 1011G 4B, 1062, 10815D, and E, 109A 15D, 109B 14C, 109C 15E, 101017F, 1011A 16G, 1011C 15H, 1011D 15H, 1011E 214H, 10 by itself, 11E 314H, 1011F 15H, 1012A 9L, 1012B 14D, 1013A 17I, 1014 9B, 1015 41, and 1015 41F in Title 10 of the Pleasant Grove City Code.
I'm sorry, could you repeat
Those sections.
As previously stated.
Can we do that when we make a motion?
Yes.
Like he said, what he said?
Okay,
All right, I'll provide a little bit of background here. The reason why this coming forward was brought to our attention about a month or so ago with the developers of the Bella Grace development that is occurring on the north end of the block that is up north of the library. Trying to think the best way to describe that. So on the north side of the library, the north side of that next block. 2-acre property, originally Steve Allred's development. So they began their site preparation, and they were challenged by some neighbors as to exactly what they were doing with their meeting city code. We met with some of the neighbors and talked to them about it. It was pointed out that we had something in our code that I think was unintentional. When we created the overlay for the downtown mixed-use overlay, it was based off of some other codes used by other cities. We did try at that time to review it, decide does this fit Pleasant Grove, and develop it into a Pleasant Grove code. However, I think there was something that got through that we probably didn't pay close enough attention to, and that was that it required that all road improvements associated with a project be completed prior to the issuance of a building permit. And as we looked at that further, there's no other zoning code that currently requires that, and that we could not come up with any good reasoning for that. It is very onerous to require all road improvements, especially when they're associated with the interior development of the property, to be completely done before building permit is issued. So we decided that that was a code amendment we needed to take and have scheduled, or immediately scheduled it. As we then reviewed the code, we wanted all of the verbiage with all the other zones to fall in line with this move as well as with each other. And so we reviewed all codes in residential and commercial in how we handle this. And basically, the other zones were pretty much in line with themselves, but not necessarily with what we were trying to say. So, in other words, what we're trying to do is instead of requiring all improvements before a building permit is issued, that all road improvements are done prior to occupancy permit being issued, so that they can do these improvements simultaneously as building construction and road construction. So basically that's what we're doing to the code now, is just allowing that to occur. And so we're going through all these different sections where we make reference to this, and there are certain places where the verbiage is a little bit different than others, but in the end goal is to just put them in line with each other so that we can issue a building permit before the road improvements are completed. I can review those different sections if you would like, and the verbiage that we have proposed, how it brings that in line, but that's in essence what is being proposed.
If I may ask, Ken, do we have this situation occur very often where the improvements are going in prior to the building permit, or what's the typical practice aside from this one?
Well,
project?
and it kind of depends on the situation of the property. So there are properties that have complete road improvements completed before any construction comes, and so in that case, then we just issue a building permit. But of course, in the case of this property, and as well as a lot of other new developments, the road improvements are not completed. And so what we do with residential development, when we have a residential subdivision with several lots in it, or many lots, is we will allow up to 25% of the total lots in that development, or in the phasing or in the plat, to begin construction with a building permit prior to the completion of the road improvements. But because there's separate ownerships involved, we determined previously, I think this is almost 8-9 years ago, when we amended the code to say once you reach that 25%, the road improvements need to be completed for what is in that plat area. Because otherwise you end up having separate ownership of different parcels, that some of them are completed and some of them are not with road improvements, and it gets to be problematic. So in residential subdivisions only, we have that restriction. Up to 25% of lots can be issued building permit prior to road improvement completion. Otherwise, a development with this change will be able to move forward without completion of road improvements with a building permit, but that it would need to be completed before we would issue a certificate of occupancy.
Question, Mayor. So let's take Bella Grace, for example, the road, I know it's cold now, winter, but what would, I know they fixed a little bit of the road on main streets, but on the other side, First North, that could stay the way it is, unimproved, until the 25% threshold is met.
Well, in this instance, it's all one property, all one ownership,
Right,
so that
okay.
wouldn't come under that requirement.
So the distinction with the 25% only applies if it's a
Individual
single-family
lots.
residential home
Right.
scenario.
I suppose it could be a multi-family development that was broken up into different lots, we would apply that there as well. But usually, the multi-family development is going to be in one ownership, one lot, and so that's handled all separately.
David?
So maybe to add a little bit of clarification, I think historically maybe 30, 40 years ago, the requirement was, I'm a developer, I'm coming in and building a subdivision, okay, you're approved, developer, build everything, and then you can come in and start building homes. And the developer community said, well, from a cash flow perspective, that's really difficult, kind of like bonding for improvements so I can record. Is there a way so that we can work this out? So the 25% is concedes that, okay, you've got water and sewer and all that stuff, saying you still have a cave, let's go ahead and start building some homes because you're gonna have that done before. In the commercial areas, particularly with something like the downtown village zone, where you allow for zero setback, in fact require zero setback on some of the streets, it's not possible to build a building once you've built the sidewalk that comes right up to the building. So there's a certain amount of just practicality on how you're gonna construct. I mean, the commercial projects make sense, build the building while you're putting a major infrastructure on the ground, and then you come and do the surface stuff and button it all up together.
Makes sense. So no occupancy for any of the buildings?
Right.
Until all the road work is completed? Okay.
Ken, on 10-11G-4, I think it's at I call it the 2 + 2 years. Is that, am I reading that right? they have up to 2 years, but could get an additional 2 years?
Yes. And that's on a case-by-case basis and by request.
Would that be determined by you and staff or planning commission, who would determine that extension?
Well, it states there, an applicant may request an extension of up to 2 years for the completion of improvements from the community development director. So,
Are they able to request that right now, like for any?
yes. So it provides some flexibility.
This will streamline some things for you, correct, and for them, so.
Seems like it makes sense. Further questions for Ken? Should we open it up then? Let's open it up to the public. Any comments, questions? Please feel free to come up and state your name and address. Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back up here. Further questions or discussion? Okay.
I have a question of curiosity on the involvement of our legal counsel on this issue. Are we comfortable that these modifications achieve our goal? Have we looked at how they cross-reference? I think we have the flexibility to revisit this if we find that we don't achieve our intended objective, but I'm comfortable with the intention of these modifications. I haven't done a thorough analysis of every cross-reference myself, so just raise that.
So, Scott, we do have a policy and procedure around approval of language before it comes to the council, is that right?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're gonna modify an ordinance or a resolution, typically you have legal take a look at it.
Yeah, on the administrative side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if Tina hasn't reviewed it, then that's a misstep on our part, but I don't know if this is a huge issue that needs to.
I haven't reviewed it, cross-checking and make sure all the cross-references are correct. Normally they send me a hard copy and I sign off on the cover sheet. I don't recall seeing this one, but, it could have been something that he did earlier in December, and I just didn't.
Ken, do you wanna speak to that at all?
Well, all I can say is it was my understanding that Royce Davies, our city planner, followed the procedure and sent it to Tina. Now, perhaps that got missed, I don't know, but I understood that it had been sent to her.
Okay. Is there a way to take action on tonight, pending the legal review, or is that appropriate? Okay. All right, any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, Mayor, that we as a council adopt ordinance 2016-3 for a proposed text amendment to change from requiring completion of all infrastructure improvements prior to the issuance of a building permit to completion prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, modifying a number of specific sections identified in our agenda, and requesting.
Well done.
Well done.
And pending a legal review to make sure that we do have modifications in every section that achieve the intended objective of that motion.
Thank you, Ben.
And I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ben and a second by, excuse me, Diana. By voice, Eric,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Sid,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
motion carries. Okay. So now we move on to section 10, item A. This is not listed as any kind of input. I'd like to ask the council up front, are you desirous to have input on 10A and or 10B from public?
I've had a number of calls about this agenda item. I would be looking of public comment.
Okay, so we have Ben and Diana, anyone else?
Bring it on, yes.
Eric?
And the evening's still early.
Sid? Okay, Lynn?
You gotta know.
Okay. All right, so on item 10A, we'll have the discussion about the resolution, and and then we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll bring it back here for consideration.
Okay, thank you. We talked about this in early December, got some feedback from the city council on how to proceed with our rules and procedures. Excuse me. When we had that discussion, I think it's fair to say at the time it wasn't unanimous as far as how the council wanted to proceed. But we had 3 council members that wanted to proceed in this particular direction. So I think I've accompanied what the direction was in this document. So if I have missed anything, or this does not encapsulate the feeling of the majority of the council, then I can take the feedback. If I need to modify the document, I can. So one of the things, and I've just outlined the things in red that have been changes. Item 10, just to address public hearings. As we had the discussion, the idea was that if, when we're taking public comments about public hearings and open sessions, these same rules would apply. Item 10.2 is what covers the time limit. The time limit that was requested was 3 minutes, so a time limit of 3 minutes will be given to any individual addressing the city council during a public hearing or open session. And then in item 10.3, and I apologize, I forgot to put this in red, and this is just a minor change. The order of comment to the end of it said that we would have a sign-up sheet whenever anybody wanted to address the council. Most of the time when we have open session or public hearing, we don't have that many people. We have had some meetings where we've had more than 10 people that want to address. And so there have been a couple of times we've created a sign-up sheet in order to kind of give people a direction, who is next, and kind of keep in order that way. So
that one says discretion.
Yeah, so I changed that. Our old one did not give a discretion. It just said you're going to have a sign-up sheet every time.
Thank you.
So on this one, if you just at the bottom of that paragraph, it says if there are numerous individuals that would like to address the city council, the mayor has the discretion of creating a sign-up sheet. And so the mayor can just do that, and we can do it at that time. On our procedures, item B, individuals can address the city council one time on each issue. If there is a desire to speak again on the same issue, they may do so at the discretion of the city council. So the feedback was, you get your 3 minutes, you can address the council, and that's your time. If there's somebody that really wants to say something more than that, then again, the council has the discretion to change that. So those were kind of the main points as far as the time limit, and then addressing only one time. Everything else in here we went over a month ago, and it's pretty basic. The 10.5 was just the manner of addressing the council. I didn't make any changes here, but if people are addressing the city councils, address them as a body, not as individuals or specific members. And then item 10.6 is if somebody is addressing the city council and they ask questions, or if their discussion, dialogue happens between the person addressing the council and the city council, then there is a flexibility there that the city council has to ask for further input. So at any time, if we're having a particular discussion and the council wants the input from a member of the public, the council can request that. If the member wants to speak, then it is at the council's discretion if it's not a public hearing or if it's not open session at that point. And then this was just a little bit of a housekeeping item, our meeting adjournment. Our policy that we developed in 2001,
We passed a resolution in 2001.
A resolution saying that we would adjourn our meetings at 11 o'clock. If not, if we're going to extend past 11, the city council has to actually make a motion to extend. And we've done that a few times.
Does that include executive session?
Yes. Yeah. If we're in executive session at 11 o'clock, we have to vote to extend the meeting. And then what's not reflected in our policy and procedures is that the meeting must adjourn at 12 o'clock. And in our policy in 2001, that was adopted. It has just never been reflected in this document, so I put it back in here. So in essence, if we reach midnight, which in my 6 years here we have, thankfully, we've never reached midnight.
Not close.
we've gone close a couple times, but that's an automatic adjournment, and if whatever business that still hasn't been done or is in the middle of, just needs to be scheduled for another meeting. So that's the changes that I've made to the document at the request of the city council. Is there any questions? Did I miss anything, or did you want something addressed?
On 10.4B, I think it should include the mayor on there as well. Discretion of the mayor and city council.
Yeah, the reason I put city council was it refers also into the document that if somebody wants to address the council and it's not a public hearing, then it's the discretion of the city council, not the mayor, on whether they speak. So, I mean, if we want to throw the mayor in there, we can, but I mean, technically, if the city council is going to take a vote on whether they're going to open it up or not, the mayor doesn't vote on items like that normally. So, if you want to give it solely the discretion of the mayor, you have that ability to do that, and let him make the choice whether somebody's going to speak or not. This was addressed to be consistent with what else was in the document.
Other questions, comments?
Out of curiosity about, a question about this 12 midnight cutoff. Is there no way to accept that if there's an emergency? That's a hard stop?
The resolution simply says that council adopted a resolution that we would not extend beyond 11 without a motion, and that all business would end at midnight, and if we're not finished would be moved to the next meeting agenda. In the case of an emergency, obviously, you just make a motion that says we're in an emergency and we're gonna go past midnight, I mean, it's not.
Okay, yeah, just a point of curiosity. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments before we open it up?
So Mayor, I'm gonna leave this up here, so if people wanna reference it, just, it's a touch screen and you can move that up and down as you need.
Just don't modify it. Okay, we're gonna open it up for public input. If you'd like to speak on this item, please come up and state your name and address. We have a lot of discussion, we'll go to the 3-minute time limit. And if we have even more discussion, we'll create a sign-up sheet.
Matt Godsey, 1026 East, 1100 North. I really just have a question on the 3 minutes and kind of what does that entail? I see a lot of times when the public gets up that there's questions that are asked. Is it the amount of time that I'm talking, or is it the discussion time between?
It's your time.
All right, so we're gonna have a stopwatch
So
up
like,
here.
yeah, and if you remember, go back 2.5 years, roughly, 2 years or so, we had a meeting in the fire department bays, and there were probably 100 people signed up for public comment.
Yeah, we took 89 comments that night.
So it became necessary to create a sign-up sheet, which was anticipated, and then to have a person manage the stopwatch. In fact, it was on the on the overhead projector, and the order of the speakers was listed, and that was a lot of that particular meeting was not dialogue. It was comment. And so in cases like that, open mic, give everybody an opportunity, 3 minutes, and that's how you manage through it.
So I suggest we find an app that's like one of those chess timers where you can click it, go, you know.
No.
Thank you.
A lot of sergeant at
So there was comment here, the comment here, the speaker can see the timer.
Yeah, we probably, I don't know if we put one here and here so that we can all see it. It might just be on the screen where everybody can see it.
We haven't done anything because council hasn't adopted this, but the discussion we had was if we were gonna put it up on the screen, but then the comment was made is if there's something on the screen that somebody wants to address and we have the timer up there, it's gonna be a little bit of a mess. So we talked about buying an actual countdown clock and where we put it so that people can see it, we'll kind of figure that out. But maybe just in front of Kathy here, she could be the one that manages it.
Sure.
So that those addressing know what their time is.
Am I go? Okay, my name is Christopher Williams. My address is 845 North, 100 East, Pleasant Grove, Utah. My question is specifically for this one right here. So as I can see, the council, so every time someone comes back up, there's gonna have to take more time to vote from the council?
No,
Is that
I
what
think,
it?
I think what we're gonna do, this is what it sounds like. Everybody gets one shot at the,
Yeah.
at the podium. So take your 3 minutes, state it. If there's interaction,
Yeah.
there's interaction. If there isn't, you're done, sit down.
No, I'm talking about, but, for the second time, if there needs to be some kind of clarification from a citizen, maybe they felt that what they said was misrepresented.
Okay.
That happened, last week, where a citizen came back up and felt like his views were misrepresented by other citizens, so he felt like he wanted to add some clarification. In that case, it goes to a vote, right?
The way this is written, yeah, that would be a literal interpretation.
See,
The council would determine that.
I kind of worry about that specifically, because then I feel like maybe it could go against somebody's political views or something like that, that some people may be shut off and other people won't.
What would you propose as a solution?
Well, I would like to see a person be able to just come back up and express that clarification, you know? I know it happens from time to time, but I don't like that rule at all, personally.
So you don't like it, you would remove it. What if
Yeah.
the council wanted to keep that in there? How would we make it so that it could work?
Well, I definitely don't think it should go to a vote, you know, because if it goes to a vote, then some citizens will have, you know, have the right to speak at some times and other citizens won't. I don't think that's really favorable.
Okay,
So,
I think I understand. So your concern is, if you sit down now, let's say this was a live.
Yeah.
You sit down and then there's a discussion and what you said is referenced and it's referenced incorrectly. One thing is that if you wanted to get back up to clarify,
Exactly.
it would require the council to let you get back up.
Yes.
The second thing would be, the council may, which we are a political body, allow some people to speak and others not.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay.
Drew Armstrong, 995 East Center Street. I can see Christopher's point as far as that goes. I would propose that you put like another minute in there for a second trip up to the mic. If there needs to be a correction made, I think that would take care of it. So if, you know, somebody has misstated your remark or whatever, or said something that you need to correct, I'm sure you could correct it real quick and easy. I do like the idea of having some rules and decorum as far as this goes. As far as these meetings go, there are, when we volunteer to serve in the capacity that you're serving in, you know, I mean, or as I've served in with the planning commission, part of, I think I have a hard time complaining about my time. I mean, to a degree I do, but where I get concerned is when I've watched people get stuck behind a big contentious issue. And, you know, you've got some grandma lady here waiting for something that's at the very end of all the agenda items, and they're here until 11:30, 11 o'clock is about how late we've made them wait before. Some of that can be anticipated and we can juggle around the schedule a little bit, but I think just out of respect for everybody who is coming and they don't understand or they don't know how long, I mean, we have these meetings that last an hour and we have these meetings that last 3.5, 4, 5 hours. You have no idea sometimes what you're signing up for when you get put on the agenda. So I do, I think Christopher has a point, and I think that you know, people ought to be able to stand up and say, wait a second, that's not what I said, that's not what I meant, you took it wrong. And I think you could correct that really quick and easy.
so a question, because we discussed, residents not interacting with each other, not, you know, taking personal things like that. So how would we determine if they were feeling, I mean, because then we can end up doing that for everyone.
Sure.
I mean, is this their called out
I would-
by name, or are we trying to avoid that?
I'd let them do it. Like you said, you know, you don't want to be able to say, well, they shut me down because politically I have a divergent view. I think you just let everybody come back up for another 1 minute. And, I mean, if you keep it 1 minute the second time and 3 minutes the first time, then obviously they're not gonna be able to say as much the second go around. But there should be enough time, that should be enough time for them to correct any misstatements. I think that's fair.
So that would be a recommendation on a way to allow somebody to get up to clarify what's being interpreted or said about what they said.
Blaine Thatcher, 120 North, 1400 East. Two quick points, and I will be brief. I didn't do it.
Do I need to pull it back
No,
up?
didn't do it. I'll change it while you get the
It wasn't
question.
your fault.
Okay. I think it's important to note here that the restrictions being proposed are restrictions on the citizens that you represent. And I don't see any restriction on somebody who is presenting or, any people that want something from you as a council. And so, again, I think that's a little misplaced. The other thing is, I think we should point out that the further you distance public comment from your discussion and particularly your vote on a particular issue, I'm concerned that the possibility exists that you may vote differently than you would if people were allowed to comment directly and closely related to the items that you're discussing. And so I think you need to consider that when you weigh these kind of restrictions. So, thank you.
Thank you, Blaine. Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and close the public comment. And come back up and discuss as a council. So we have some proposed changes to the language that's in the proposed resolution. They're highlighted in red. For the most part, I think the intention is quite clear and reflects what the council had stated when we talked in December, and we had the housekeeping matter about ending at midnight. We've had some input from members of the public, probably not really addressed here, and that's the ones about why are we not allowing public input on all of the items or more of the items. So that's an opportunity for the council to discuss that.
So I guess I wanna go back to what the two residents said about the correction too. Is it just a correction in the statement, or are we allowing everyone to get back up for a minute automatically?
Well, I think that Christopher gave an example of a situation where a person might want to get back up, and the example he gave is a good one. If what they had said was misinterpreted and needed to be clarified from their perspective.
Misinterpreted by the council or
Right.
another resident?
Either way. Somebody got up and addressed the comment that Christopher made, whether it be the council or an individual from the public. And that's not what Christopher intended to say.
Because then I think we're going back to two residents.
It shouldn't be
kind of
interacting with one another.
But I think that's what we're allowing. If it's, I can understand if the council misinterpreted because that could affect our vote. But having residents up there kind of going back and forth with misinterpretation, I don't know if
Right.
that's the place to be doing that. I don't know.
I think this is where we get into the council using judgment about managing meetings. It's pretty clear when you have a situation where it's just like we did in the firehouse, and then it's different when you can tell that, okay, there's fighting going on, either this way, or this way, or this way, and that would be inappropriate. And so we kind of need to be together managing that. But to try to articulate all of those eventualities in writing could become more problematic than managing the meeting. And so I would would just urge the council to use discretion in writing these kinds of rules so that you don't bind yourself in a way that you didn't intend.
Well, and I think Scott mentioned that several times in the document, that we do have discretion and flexibility to extend time, to allow for more interaction, so there's flexibility within.
The council always has that prerogative. The question is, do we try to articulate in written form the interaction to a degree where it becomes cumbersome in and of itself? I mean, there's things like Robert's Rules and other forms of managing meetings which we have not adopted as a city, my understanding, for good reason, because they can get very technical, and I've been in those meetings. And if you don't know what Robert's Rules is, you're not gonna get any mic time, because somebody else is there, and then they call the question, and, it just goes on and on. So it really becomes a meeting just between the people that understand Robert's Rules, and I don't think that's what we're about. What we're trying to do is create an orderly setting where everyone has an opportunity to participate, and on those items that require input, and it's not apparent that we're gonna get it, then the council uses discretion to allow that input. So my thought on some of the things that are written here would be, look at it from the other perspective of, how do you actually envision these meetings going? The one I think about is my daughter, right? She crossed the line, she's on lockdown, and right now, she doesn't have the privilege to use her phone or computer. Well, that's a very firm, autocratic method of managing that situation that may be required in that situation. Most of the time, probably not. Most of the time, there's room for dialogue, as long as it's respectful. So, and that's what I heard the council, the chief complaint that I heard from the council was that the dialogue was personal, cutting, disrespectful both ways, unproductive towards the management of the meeting and the issues that we were trying to deal with. So if we can manage this and leave that other stuff out of it, we're probably gonna be okay.
So are we at the stage where we're having discussion over this issue?
We are. We're discussing.
I have some thoughts and some concerns. I've heard a lot from the public on this particular issue. I take exception to the position that our council meetings don't have rules of decorum. We have rules of decorum. We're proposing some amendments to those rules of decorum to add a couple of additional restrictions. I don't know that they're necessary. I think that they may be cumbersome. I think that they may be a solution in search of a problem. I think I can count on fingers of one hand the number of times we've had somebody actually get up to the mic for a second time on the same issue. I just don't think it actually happens. And I do think Mr. Williams has a point that there's a cumbersome process. If we're going to take the discretion that had previously been in the hands of the mayor and spread it amongst the entire council, we're gonna have to have votes periodically. When somebody says, I'd like to take another minute or more, depending on what we decide to allow tonight, I think that's unnecessary. I think this is as I said, a problem in search of a solution in search of a problem. I think it's a chance to shoot ourselves in the foot in terms of the image we project to the public on whether or not we welcome their input and the commentary. And I think most of these changes are necessary. I don't have a problem with the integration of the 12 midnight resolution language that we have omitted in the past in this. I think the other provisions I don't see as necessary in our city, in a city our size, and the amount of commentary we've had. We've had some great empirical research. Thank you for the time invested in getting that kind of data. I just don't see the necessary movement in that direction. And furthermore, if we were to impose any of these changes, the one that puts the discretion in the hands of the entire council, I strongly feel should be in the hands of the mayor. But that's the cleanest, easiest, most efficient, most practical way to actually manage a meeting well. So that's my position. I'm inclined to vote against these changes, other than the inclusion of a 12 midnight hard cutoff without an emergency.
So, as the mayor said, based on a citizen request last year, we changed basically the whole format of our meeting. We sessions. We allow the public to speak on every agenda item for limitless amount of time, as many times as they wanted. Essentially turning every agenda item into a town hall meeting. And in the course of the past year, and I can speak to this, I feel pretty confidently because I've attended every meeting in the past year and haven't missed one. Our meetings have become, in my opinion, and I've been inundated with some phone calls from people and emails regarding this issue, less efficient, less effective, and more disrespectful. And so I think we tried it for a year on this citizen's request, and it's not a productive way or an appropriate way to do business in our city. To make someone wait who's officially put their item of business on the agenda because citizens want to speak over and over again for a limitless amount of time isn't appropriate. It's not a way we should be doing business. You can still speak in the open session, you can still speak at the required public hearing, you can still contact council members, we're not taking any of that away. But the purpose of a meeting is to conduct official city business, and part of that is hearing from the public. And I don't know another city who allows the public to speak on every single agenda item. In fact, this is standard procedure for most school boards and most cities to have a time limit and to have some official rules of decorum so we can effectively move through the meeting without having people who have been on the agenda wait for 4 hours. And I've experienced this firsthand over the past year, and I can tell you it's because of the rule change that we made in last January, because we opened it up so broadly that the rules just kind of went out the door. I had someone who'd never attended a meeting attended with a 17-year-old son who sat here and emailed me after and said he could not believe the amount of disrespect shown to our council and the way the meeting went. It was embarrassing. That's not how our city should be managing meetings. And I'm open to trying this for a while, and if it doesn't work, this is a moving, fluid piece of legislation that we're working on. Just as we did with the past year, we can come back and say it's not working, let's try something else until it works for our city and the residents. But I don't think we're doing anything different than what's normally done in other cities and counties and school boards, and this is pretty standard procedure. But speaking from the past year, and from the past prior 2 years as well, there was a complete change in the dynamic of our meetings the past year, and I think this was wise because we opened the door and it got out of control.
Thank you. Others?
Yeah, sure. So I looked at Cedar Hills. Glad you're not there, because they do give you the 3 minutes per person with the total minutes of 30 minutes of open session time. I contacted Mr. Church, I think is it David? From the state, and asked him some questions. He sent some rules of meeting procedure and talked at length about the different processes and what he has sent down to the cities and asked them to follow. And within that is the 3-minute procedure in there. A lot of other cities do the 3-minute. Now, Jennifer, thank you for the numbers. You said the average time is about 3 minutes, I think. And so I'm in the mindset of, let's try this. Let's see what happens. If the average time is 3 minutes, then we're not hurting anyone's ability to get up. And Chris, if you need to get up, you can get up, all right? Even though you live by me, I'll let you get up. Yeah, but it gets down to a simple process of transaction of council business. We've been elected, and I just took an oath to do that for the city. And when we open it up on some of these items, it does get out of control. And I feel that I have a responsibility to this city to watch out for it, to make sure that I'm listening on all fronts, whether it's via phone, email, whatever it takes. There's other avenues to get your word out. And I don't think we're stripping people of this process. It's always been there. These rules have always been there. Other cities have these other options that they put in, and I don't see a lot of clamoring from them. I've actually attended a lot of them. And the processes went very smoothly. And so that's just I had a lot more, I had a lot written down, but that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just, Jennifer, thanks for your information. I know you won't probably like this, but you locked me into being supportive of moving forward with the legislation by saying that you could see the 3-minute average all the way through. In other words, we're not changing very much. We're just trying to get things down hard copy. So I'll be voting for it.
This isn't over.
I think people would like to hear what you're saying.
Well, to apologize, I had not ever studied the procedure policies before, and so I did feel that what's that?
Orange.
Yeah, it was just too much reading, it wasn't applicable at that point. So I was grateful for the opportunity to actually go through it, and as opposed to peruse it, just actually really study it. And because I'm orange, 3 minutes is restrictive. It's very difficult for me to express myself in a short amount of time. I think while I'm speaking. So I understand as residents, it's as you're listening to something and as you're gaining information and you're digesting it and you have something that you want to contribute, sometimes the thought process and the words that need to be formed take longer. I also understand that a lot of people that stand at the mic are nervous. We are a scary group of people.
Terrifying. That end of the table.
That end of the table. This end of the table, not so much. The grandparent end of the table. So
The grandparents.
I have, he's new, so it doesn't count. So I have some, I'm feeling that as I went through, studied it, I felt that it honed me in a little bit more as to what we needed to feel and hear during our meetings. The 3 minutes, I was also very grateful for the amount of time that Jennifer spent, hours I'm sure, to get that data. So what I would like to say in my not more than 3 minutes is that there's 2 sentences that we're talking about. One is, can you get back up, and the other one, can you talk longer than 3 minutes? I'm okay with how it is originally, but I have a plea, and that is I love suggestions, and I hate repetition. And it is very, very difficult to sit for 5 hours and listen to the same comment, just said differently a little bit. And so I am going to vote no with a plea.
Thank you.
I think one thing I want to clarify is that the firehouse meeting.
Is this your 1 minute review?
Yeah, this is it. At the firehouse meeting, because we had explained the procedure ahead of time, out of the 89 people, not one complained about the 3 minutes. They came prepared, and even those who weren't prepared, no one complained about the 3 minutes because we had expressed the procedure properly and noticed it ahead of time. And I believe if we let people know that's what it is, on the city website, whatever we need to do. But out of those 89 people, and with how heated that subject was, not one complained about the time limit. Now, there wasn't the dialogue, and we've already addressed that if the dialogue happens, we'll allow for continued time. But I think that shows that people will respect that, and people will know that there's others who want to get up when you put some sort of procedure like that in place.
If I may, Mayor, 1 minute. My thought on that issue is I think we have procedures in place that allow the mayor discretion to impose a limit. I think people understand it when there's 100 people that wanna talk. If we don't limit it to 3 minutes, we're gonna go all night, but when there are 5 people that wanna talk, and some of them aren't very confident in a microphone, and they wanna take an extra 30 seconds, I'm not the one that wants to shut them down at 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And I think we don't need to. I think we have infrequent enough situations where that arises that this again is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, that isn't necessary.
So you don't feel over the past year that our meetings have become disrespectful, less efficient, longer, and less effective?
I have heard disrespectful comments in the last year. I don't think we have been ineffective or inefficient. I think the mayor has had some great opportunities to be reminded himself of these rules. I think I have all the confidence in this world that he can tell somebody that's being disrespectful that they're done and that it's time for them to sit down. And I prefer to have one person making that decision so that we don't have a vote. Is Bob being disrespectful? Does Bob need to sit down? I don't want to have that vote amongst us. I think the mayor has, I'm an advocate for our mayor, good mayor's discretion. He was overwhelmingly elected. I have total confidence in his ability to run a meeting and make sure it's efficient and effective, and I'd like to let him do his job.
So to not put as much burden on him, the 3-minute regulation and the 3-minute idea is so he doesn't have to regulate every person that gets up, and that's, I think, one reason the meetings have gone the way they have in the past year, because it was so open. It's hard to regulate one person based on another. How do you do that from one citizen to another and try and manage that? We're trying to help the situation by putting a 3-minute time period in place so we don't have to do that person by person and say what you do and you don't, and you get more and you don't. We're trying to, I think, streamline the process there and help so the burden isn't on one person.
I think broadening it creates some cumbersome, burdensome processes that will come across as less fair than having somebody that was elected, that's accountable, and a single individual to say, okay, that's enough, sit down. I prefer without these changes. It's that simple.
Just one comment on that. Yes. I don't believe that the 3 minutes will change content.
Yeah.
So I don't think that limiting someone's time is going to change what they're going to say.
To that point, I think the more they feel restricted, the more they might be inclined to be critical in those 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify?
No.
Okay, I'll just go. It does say in the policy, the mayor is the one, if there is somebody out of order, it's the mayor that determines that. It's not the city council. The city council's determination of whether to let somebody speak a second time or to open it, a non-public hearing item up for public hearing. So that's where the council discretion is. The mayor's discretion is still running the meeting and, using the gavel if necessary, if there's something inappropriate.
Okay, any other input, discussion? Okay, are we ready to take action?
Mayor, I'll make the motion that we deny Resolution 2016-01, amending the city council policy and procedure policy.
Okay, motion to deny by Ben,
And I'll second it.
seconded by Diana. By voice, Diana. Motion to deny.
So this is a double negative.
Yes.
So it'd be a yes, you want to deny. No, you
I
don't.
have to think it through, sorry.
Okay. So, yes, Diana. Lynn?
No.
Eric?
No.
Sid?
No.
Ben?
Yes.
Okay, so we have 3-2, not to deny. Okay, do we have another motion?
Mayor, make a motion to consider adoption resolution 2016-1, amending the city council policy and procedure policy.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Eric to approve, a second by Lynn. Diana? This would be, if you agree to let it go forward, it's yes.
No.
Okay.
Thank you,
Lynn?
Mayor.
Eric?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Ben?
No.
Okay, 3-2, the resolution passes. Now I'll give my comment. We cannot help but recognize that this group operates in a political world. That's the requirement. This group is not unpolitical. The whole thing is political. And oftentimes, when you have good people in a community with differing points of view, well, the US anyway has adopted this style of governing to allow for the majority of the people to speak. The way they do that is by speaking through their elected representatives. In the case that we have today, the vote is a good example. We have 3 people, newly elected or re-elected, who represent the most current majority of confidence from the people to carry out their work. And they're accountable to the people. So the way to hold them accountable is the next time they come up for election, you do something about it. If you like the way it went, you vote for them. If you don't like the way it went, you don't vote for them. And the same goes for those that might have opposed this particular item. Unfortunately, I think what's happened is we've carried political disagreements from outside city council meeting and perpetuated them into city council meeting, into a good deal of some of our resolutions and ordinances or policies and procedures that have come forward. And because of that dynamic and the open mic method and the way that we've facilitated that this last year, yeah, the meetings have become heated. They've become, in some cases, longer and somewhat disrespectful in many directions. It's not just public to council, it's also been council to public. And that's a failing on the mayor's part, not managing the meeting well. So what you have now is a decision by the elected people that this is what the new policy and procedure is. My job as mayor is to support this, and that's what I will do. I will support what the council has said. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I ask that, and maybe that we'll go in a different direction now that this has been approved. When we get to an item that's not a public hearing, will we continue to be asked if we're going to open it up to the public?
What does the policy and procedure say? It's at the discretion of the council. Is that right?
Yes. I think what Sid's asking is, are you gonna ask before every
Yeah,
item?
absolutely. If there is an item that a number of people have said that they want to give input on, it's the decision of the council, whether you do or do not allow them to speak.
So when they,
Just like you did on this one tonight.
when they have expressed their desire to, is that before the meeting or email?
They can do it in the pulpit during open session, express that desire to speak at that time for many of the reasons that were given. Something comes to light that they didn't have an opportunity to see ahead of time. But the decision is not mine, it's the council's. So the next question then, I think where you're really going is, do you want the mayor to stop asking the council on an item that's not listed as a public input?
To be honest, yes,
Okay.
because I've said yes every time you've asked it this year, and there's been times when I haven't wanted to, but I have felt that if I don't, I'm the bad guy.
Okay.
And where it puts me on the spot, I mean, if we know ahead of time and it's not previously on the agenda, but there's been, things expressed, but there's been times when honestly I have wanted to say no.
Okay.
But I haven't wanted to be the only one because then I'm the bad guy, I don't want to
Sure,
be in the public.
that's understandable. So
And
let's
so-
just put it to the council, because I think that's the real question. When we have an agenda and the item is not listed for public input, how many of you would like the mayor not to ask you if you want to accept input from the public? Lynn agrees with that. Sid, anyone else? How many of you would prefer that the mayor ask the council if you would like to receive input from the public? Ben?
I would love to, I can't say generally all the time. So if the horse is dead, I don't want to.
Do you want the mayor to use
Like this
discretion
particular
So
vote?
do I
and
say,
guess what everyone's thinking?
Diana, is the horse dead?
Take for instance tonight, the 20 cell phones and 3 air cards, right? I mean, why?
And I don't think that's gonna come up, right? Nobody brought it up during the open session. It's probably not gonna be an issue.
So I think that at the open session would be a very good time to,
Are you saying the open session would be a good time to gauge
Yes.
whether you want to allow public input later or not?
or depending on how many calls I've gotten that week, or what emails I've received, or, I think it's just a case-by-case basis on that one. Plus, it also depends on how many items are on the agenda, how late are we going, do we have an applicant there for another item?
So, I won't, what I'm hearing is, don't use discretion. Ask, right? Just let it go the way it is. But I'm hearing from you that you would like to have that evaluated on a case-by-case basis, depending on the emails.
An option,
Please.
like we have a work session coming up, right? You can ask and that's something about it. Right? Or usually like we're gonna review the contracts week, next week. It's a question, yes or no?
So, did that answer the question? I'm not sure it did. Yes or no? You want me to stop asking, or you want me to ask?
It's a hard one for me, right? Because like the cell phone right here, we're gonna hit next. It's definitely not,
I
right?
probably won't ask.
But we've been asking on, we've been taking kind of vote on everyone, so if it's your discretion and you feel it's necessary, then we'll just have to, if I wanna say no, I'll just say no. I was gonna have
Well,
to-
so far you said no,
As I said.
and he said no. So we need one more person to say no, and then I won't do it. Or we need 3 people to say yes, and I will continue to ask you.
Yes.
No? And,
I'd like to hear the comment from the city attorney.
yeah,
Well, I was just gonna say that typically in the past, how it's done is if somebody has an agenda item that they would like to make a public comment on, they either raise it ahead of time so that you're aware of it, or they raise it during the open session and say, item number 9 on your agenda is not scheduled for a public hearing. It's something I would like to speak on. Then when the item comes up, then the mayor can ask. But it typically isn't an automatic ask. And it's often not even just left to the mayor's discretion. It's only brought up if somebody's exhibited a request. And then the council can vote on it that way. That way it's not a routine, ask on everyone.
The other way I've seen it done is if there's a request for public hearing, it is rescheduled and agenda as a public hearing the next week or 2 weeks later.
Because that's not the other issue, is that it hasn't been noticed publicly as a public hearing.
That's right.
And so I've been hesitant in the past year to make them a public hearing because it hasn't been noticed properly as that.
Well, in my opinion, we're not making it a public hearing, we're allowing some public comments, a legal distinction. But in my view, we all know which issues, we've heard from the public, which issues they wanna talk about. Nobody wants to talk about cell phones, they wanna talk about these other issues that we know they wanna talk about. They wanna talk about public safety buildings, they wanna talk about roads, they wanna talk about public input. And so on the ones where we're getting, like Tina said, when we're getting requests from the public to comment on something, we should ask on those questions specifically, for sure, in my view.
so I think what I heard was 3 people do not want to be asked publicly about giving input.
I like the idea of
And 2
discussion in
people
the
do.
work session, I like that idea.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item is item 10B, to consider for adoption a resolution 2016-02, authorizing the mayor to declare 20 cell phones and 3 air cards as surplus and direct them to be disposed of according to the city's policy for disposing of surplus property.
Mayor and council, pretty simple, nobody wants to talk about this. We don't either, just say yes, we're good. No, we went over our cell phone, we changed our providers from AT&T to Verizon down in Public Works. We got 20 cell phones, they don't transfer over, so we need to get rid of them, so just follow the policies, the procedures to get rid of those and surplus them and get rid of them.
Bad news, T-Mobile's moving in, you're gonna have to switch to T-Mobile.
Do we have a motion?
I've got a question, if I may.
Okay.
I'm curious if an analysis was done to make sure that this was a financially sound move.
We did a lot of analysis, we saved, I'm guessing about $3,000 to $3,500 this year on our cell phones because of the change that we made, because of the credits that we got back by making the change. They gave us a $300 credit per phone line change when we made the change, which equals $6,000. We had to buy new phones, we had to buy other things, but we're anticipating about a $3,500 savings because of the change that we made.
Annually?
That's kind of a one-time
Trade-in?
savings. The fees did go up from like $61 a phone to $71, so there's a little bit of an increase in cost, but we've got unlimited data now, which we needed, so.
Okay, thanks.
And is your coverage better, by the way?
I like
Does
it,
anybody
it's
have
great for me,
Sprint?
there's
Just an
there's some
endorsement.
people that has, yeah, so, that's a good question.
Any other questions or discussion? Entertain a motion.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2016-02 authorizing the mayor to declare 20 cell phones and 3 air cards as surplus and direct they be disposed of according to the city's policy for disposing of surplus property.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Sid, a second by Eric. Ben?
Yes.
Sid?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Cindy? Or not Cindy? Lynn?
Aw.
It's written, I have to cross it off all night long. Lynn? Diana? Okay. Thank you. Please dispose of these.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is 11A, discussion on an engineering position.
This one probably you do want to talk about, I've heard. So we're glad to be able to come and talk with you a little bit more about this. The question was, does it financially make sense for us to consider another engineering position at the city? Based on currently we have mainly 2 contract consultants with Horrocks Engineering and JB Engineering that provide a majority of our engineering services, and they do, it is fairly expensive for the city to do that. And I was with JUB and I know the costs, and so I was asked to kind of put together a summary of whether or not it made sense for us financially to consider going with another city engineering, engineering staff position. What I feel, and we'll just quickly go through the numbers, and in your package you received this kind of display of a summary of costs, and then you also received a draft proposal for the position job notice. You can look through that. If there's any questions, please ask. In kind of the way that Dagan and I, as we've talked about what we feel would be the most benefit to the city, would be to hire a engineering position that would be probably an engineering level 2, so not somebody just coming right out of college, somebody with a little of experience that can help us get some projects done, help us do some of the things that our consultants are currently doing for us. As you can see here, the first box there kind of shows what I did is I assumed I know what the costs are for our engineering services, and they range from a drafter all the way up to these high-level engineers, and I figured the average hourly savings would be about $80 an hour. So we're gonna, we'll be doing some things that John Shees, for example, was doing, or that I was doing that was at a higher rate, but we'll also be doing some things that drafters would be doing at maybe $55 an hour or something. And on the average, what that number is I anticipate that we're saving about $80 an hour on average based on what we would be saving. Also notice there's 2,080 hours in a year of, if you've been all year long, 40 hours a week. We've also not assumed that this position would be able to benefit on a full 2,080 hours. There's no way that that person would be fully, beneficial to that process and reduce that many hours from our consultants. So we put in there 1,650 hours. That's 430 hours less that's for sick leave, that's for time off, that's for trainings, things of that nature, so you can see there. So we anticipated at $80 an hour, 1,650 hours, about $132,000 of savings from our consultants.
Marty, that's not savings, isn't that what the cost would be?
Well, what I'm saying is, we would be doing that work now, so they wouldn't be billing us that $132,000. So I consider it savings, but it's the cost that would be not billed to us. When you look at the anticipated cost of the new staff engineer, you have his billing rate. Just quickly, there's a range there, engineering level 2. I just use 62,400 as probably approximately where it will be. It may not be that exactly. And as you can see there, the benefits cost. So you got approximately $93,600 in salary and benefits of a new engineering level 2 engineer. Additional costs are things that I just went through, put in some of the numbers. There are some one-time costs. We're going to have to get on the computer. We're going to have to get on the phone. So those things are there. If there's any questions on those, I can answer those. There's also yearly costs. We would want this person to be able to have software that he can actually do the work of an engineer, provide us with plans, allow us to bid these out, and do some of the work that our consultants are currently doing for us. And so you can see that there's some yearly costs for some software, for their cell phone and a few other things like that, vehicles and training. Kind of down at the bottom, so I just did an overall summary. The first year, we've got the salary savings. So what I did is I just took the total $132,000 minus what we would pay a new engineer, minus the costs that he would, these additional costs. And so for the first year, we showed a difference of $38,400 of salary savings, and then $33,950 would be our additional first year costs. Then the second year, we would have a savings of about $26,650. Third year, fourth year, about that every year thereafter. We just have ongoing costs. So over 4 years, we estimated about approximately $85,000 in savings by hiring a new engineer and having them on staff. And both Dagan and I would use this engineer to do the work that our consultants are currently providing for us.
Would you still utilize the consultant?
Yeah, there would still be a good portion of work that they would have to do. They do a lot of specialized projects, so this staff engineer would do like our development reviews. He would do small projects if we have a water line replacement project. He would help us with our streets projects. Those are generally very, they are not engineering intensive projects. They wouldn't be designing a water tank. They wouldn't be designing a pump station. They don't have the expertise. We could do that, but it is time intensive to do that. So they would still be doing those. We are not looking at creating a full engineering staff to be able to handle everything that our consultants provide. This is just what we feel our benefit would be of having an in-house staff.
So another question.
That answer your question, sorry.
A different spin on what Sid asked. Let's say you're doing, for argument's purposes, 2,080 hours a year in consulting. Are we gonna see a reduction in the 2,080 hours? In other words, when we go to the end of the year and we go back and measure how much was spent on consulting versus how much was spent on an employee with the additional equipment, are we looking at or should we be seeing a net decrease?
Is there a way to measure essentially what we're proposing?
The argument's being proposed that there will be net savings.
The one thing that I think that's going to be very difficult to do in the fact that every year we have differing amounts of work coming into the city. So we have maybe more development this year than last year, for example. So it might be hard to gauge on how much, whether or not that was actually a decrease, because you might actually pay more to have that same work done. What I think we could do is kind of gauge the work that we're giving to the staff engineer and try to gauge off of that and say, yes, this is something that JEB was doing, or yes, this is something Horrocks was doing, or another engineering firm would have done, and then we could better analyze analyze it that way, but it's gonna be very difficult to say, last year we spent $1 million, this year we're spending $850,000. Yeah, there you can see the savings. It's not that way. It depends on how many projects we have. And we have a lot of projects coming up this year with our streets projects and things that are on the 3-year plan, our utility projects. We're gonna see a lot of work getting done here in the next 6 months to a year.
So this is more like a less expensive increase.
Yes. If we don't have our own staff engineer, you're gonna be paying the $132,000 for that work to be done as compared to being able to benefit from bringing it in-house.
I have a couple of questions, Marty. The traditional analysis when you're doing the calculus of whether it's better to do something internally or outsource or go outside is whether you get benefit out of the malpractice insurance. Have we ever filed a claim against JUB or Horrocks? You're aware of?
Sure. Yeah.
We
We
have-
have, not in a formal adversarial process, but there was a design error made in the Shannon Fields project, and when he pointed out, JUB owned that and
Quickly compensated.
adjusted our bills to reflect the cost that the contractor charged us to fix the problem.
That happens regularly, I think, as there are little mistakes noticed, as you go through engineering, there's always, looking 20/20 behind you, you kind of say, oh, I should have caught that, and then you usually address that with your client and try to come up with a reasonable solution, and we did that, as Megan said, on Shannon Fields. I was part of that resolution, and we paid for the changes that the contractor had to make to address them,
So there may be, I guess my point is there may be some value in the external service providers' insurance or other coverage or other details there. And there's also often a question of whether, an outside source you can cut off when you don't have the work. And an internal hire, you have a harder time saying there's not any work, see ya. And so the question, then the second question is, do we anticipate a change as we rebuild out in the amount of engineering work that we need, where this decision and the calculus changes? Does that make sense?
yeah, perfect sense. I don't foresee adding one engineering position as a problem with future demands, even if we do cut back significantly on some of our development, for example, slows down, and therefore we're not doing as much development review. On the whole, we're still gonna have to use consultants to do some of that work, and when it cuts down, then we can bring that more in-house to do that with that engineer. I think we have the ability to do that. I've obviously been working in the industry a long time as well, to be able to help Dagan and myself kind of control that and making sure that we're getting as much work in-house done with that engineer that's most beneficial to the city.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that for the foreseeable future, we anticipate there will be a plan to keep this person busy.
Sure.
So this is a request for an increase at a less expensive cost than increasing outside engineering.
Can
And just to add, we are looking, so this is the idea of staffing for your lows, hiring out to the peaks. So as we've looked at it, and this is something that I've been looking at for a couple of years, it's saying, utility work. Public Works is gonna do water lines, sewer lines, road projects every year. There's just a base amount of work, there's the inspection of that, there's the follow-up, there's the planning. That's work that we're gonna see, and it doesn't make sense to pay a consultant. Yeah, it is nice in a consultant, Marty can attest, in 2007, 2008, the change in billings was very dramatic for JUB, because development stopped. So if we were hiring somebody solely to do development reviews, that gets us into that area where I'm not sure that's really, I really wouldn't wanna offer that kind of a position to someone and say, well, we don't know if you're gonna be here in 2 years. We wouldn't be asking for someone to do system modeling of a water system. That's something that we would hire out, right now John Sheese does that for us. I use the consultant to do surveying. Be nice to be able to have a surveyor on staff, but we don't really have enough work to pay for that level of position. This is an entry-level engineer, this is not a licensed professional, this is someone who still needs a significant amount of oversight. And maybe that will change as we look and see how this workload changes and the balance shifts between what we do in-house and what the consultants do.
Is entry or is level 2? I thought
2 years of experience, but still not a professional engineer.
Okay.
So yes, they are able to do things on their own. Are they able to do it without oversight from a professional engineer? No.
Is this gonna become part of our budget discussion?
Well, can I clarify, this is not, this money's budgeted, so we're not asking for more money, we're just saying we wanna take this money and use it this way, and as a result of that, we're gonna save money here. So this isn't a budget amendment, this is not a, we're asking for more money, we're just saying, this money's already budgeted here, we wanna move it and use it here, and by doing that, we can save.
But you're increasing FTEs, right?
We're increasing employees, but when it comes to the dollars of the budget, we're
Right.
decreasing.
The only reason we're discussing it is, one, verify that it's a savings, and two, are we required by law, if we increase FTEs, to review it?
No.
So as long as it was approved, no problem.
Yeah, like I said, the budget's been approved by the council, we're just asking to use the money in a different manner.
Okay, so is this a request? Because it's just an item of
This,
discussion.
this was a request from the city council to say, will you look at this to see if financially it's viable?
Okay.
From our perspective, yes, this is financially viable. Our recommendation would be for the council to say, okay, we agree with that, and then we would go higher.
But you don't really need our approval, you already got it.
No, you don't, because it's already in the budget, we just, unless
We're
there's.
just discussing it.
Unless the council's looking at us like we absolutely don't want to do this, then we put the brakes on. Other than that, we're gonna proceed and.
I had one other thought that I thought of earlier. Somebody might come and say, $85,000 in savings, we wanna take that and apply that to the roads. That's not how this works, because of some of these savings are going to be directly to our enterprise funds. There's gonna be a portion of it that will be to streets that we'll get the savings off of. But if we're doing a water line project, then the savings comes to the water line project. Overall, it's still a city, still
So that's what they
walk
work
around these budgets, right, it's whatever they.
So Marty, we asked you to look at this to see if it was financially viable, and you did, but what is your recommendation professionally? Do you feel we can still be?
Absolutely.
Absolutely do it?
I need another engineer here. There's a ton of work that I would love to give that engineer to do small projects. I think it makes sense for us, and I think it'll help us bring it in-house a little bit. Do I recommend that we hire 4 engineers and take all of the consultant work away? No, there's no way we could handle that. We would have to bring in some good expertise, which would cost a lot more, and then you have run the risk of layoffs or other things that you have to deal with. So I think we're in a good position, definitely to hire one, look at it after a year, see where we're at. Does it make sense to hire another one? We'd have to determine that, but one makes a lot of sense to me, and I don't think we have a lot of risk.
Do you feel the quality is gonna be there based on this level of engineer compared to the consultants? Is the quality, are we still gonna look at the same quality, do you feel from this scenario as opposed to what it is right now?
I would hope so. I was the consultant.
And we hired you.
You hired me, so you're gonna get that same quality of work with our projects. Whether I was perfect, I would say no. There are miscomings and things that we miss, but that happens to everybody.
We're taking out the overhead.
If I can add one thing too, just as a maybe a related example, the interns who have worked for me the past couple of years have found it easy to use that experience to move into other positions. In fact, the last Cody, our last intern, has left us. Both JUB and Horrocks were very disappointed when they found out that they didn't have an opportunity to bend his ear before he went to Boise to work for a different firm.
That being said, I don't have any intent of this engineer not making it a long-term position, because I can think as he becomes more and more valuable to us, the more he can do, and we can keep him, busy, and maybe we're talking 10 years or 5 years or something where he feels like he might need to move on. Hopefully not. I mean, that's not the goal of this position, is to make it a 2-year position and ship him out to somebody else because he's got all this great experience. Let's make him happy here. Let's make him very beneficial to us. Let's save where we can, all that we can, and get a lot of work done in-house.
Question, how long does it take an engineer in training to become an engineer? Like, what's the residency timeframe now?
So it's 4 years of work underneath a professional engineer. So if
4
they
years.
came with 2 years, then they would have another 2 years before they could become, potentially take the exam and apply to become a professional engineer.
Any other questions? Proceed.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And it's he or she, it could be a female.
Oh, yes. That's correct.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, public works.
Public works.
Denise, that's where I started, I know, that was Denise.
Thanks for
Yeah.
doing that,
Any women I know.
All right, item 12 is discussion items for the January 12th, 2016 City Council work session meeting.
So just, it's been a while since we've had like an official work session, so I want to just kind of remind people how things might be a little different next week. So the intent is that the room will be set up a little different. We'll have the staff sitting at tables facing the council meeting. The dialogue will be between staff and council on all these issues. And it will be discussion only. There's no action that's going to be taken. The public is very welcome to attend. There's no intent of an open session or a public discussion unless the council feels otherwise. But I think part of this, I think Diana was the one who brought this up, is sometimes we just need an ability to sit down and talk about issues and have that dialogue between staff and council so that when the decision-making comes, which it will be at a later time, the council can feel fully informed. So that's the intent of what we're doing. So for next week, we have a piece of property that has come up a few times in front of you, which is owned by Mr. Robinson over by the new Walmart grocery store. It's an odd-shaped piece of property, and we keep getting requests on people that want to develop it in a certain manner. And so instead of continually traipsing people in front of you, getting your thoughts, we figured we'd sit down and say, okay, what's your vision? What's our vision of this area? You know, it's currently zoned a certain way. Is a housing component totally, you know, somebody comes in and asks for housing, is an automatic no, you know, some of these things. And it's not only that piece, but also the property owned by Stan Smith and some of his family that borders on North County Boulevard. This plays into it as well as far as potential retail commercial frontage on North County Boulevard. So we'll have a map out, we'll kind of show what this property is, and then we want the vision from the council so that when we have developers come in, we can just answer their questions right away as to whether this project could be viable or not based on the vision that the council's gonna work with us on.
Question on this.
Yeah.
To some degree, we already have that articulated in the zoning.
That's right.
And the answer is no.
Yes.
But yet the reason they keep coming forward is because they have that right.
Well, in a way, I mean, if a developer walks in and says, I want to take this right to the city council and get their thoughts on it, usually as staff, we try to use the discretion. We try to say, here's the process. If you have a project, you go to the planning commission and then city council. On some of these large tracts of property, somebody's like, look, before I dump $10,000 into engineering and start heading down this road, if this is a no-go from the council from the start, then we kind of want that feedback. And so we try not to do too many of that because, you know, there is a process in place. And so part of it is on this piece of property, because we've had different requests over the years, I think we just want to clarify where the council's at on this particular piece so that we can have the discussion with the developers. And if somebody is proposing something that's pretty close, but maybe not all the way there, then we can get them in front of you. But if there's some automatic no's on certain things, and you're right, the zoning's already in place, and usually if people are butting up against the zoning, that's why they want to come talk to you. If they can meet the zoning requirements, then we just run them through the process. But these are people that can't meet the current zoning requirements, and they want the feedback. And we want to make sure staff are giving them proper feedback, and so I don't think we'll spend a ton of time on this. We just need some feedback from the
Ken?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think the zoning was put into place on all those smaller pieces that are in the same area there initially with the thought that if they were combined, this would make a nice retail area. However, there are some small and long pieces in that area, and one in particular is the Robinson parcel that we have received an application for, but is kind of driving this discussion, although we're not having it be the applicant's discussion, it's just what does the council have for vision. But because the Robinson piece is long and narrow, it doesn't lend itself well on its own to be a retail piece, except for that little bit that's on the front on State Street. the deep portion in the back does not work well for retail. And so that's why we've had over the years at least 4 different proposals on that piece that have been denied because it's something other than retail. And so that's why we're trying to get a little bit of direction from the council on what's your vision. If retail is indeed not viable for the back portion of that long piece and the other adjoining parcels, what would we be comfortable with in
Okay, so let me just ask the question here. It seems like since this has come forward, every one of those requests has been denied, and for the same reasons. It doesn't meet the zoning, and they're all requesting multifamily, which is the primary driver of what they want to do there.
That is not what the current, or the most recent application has.
Well, okay, so it's different. Will there be a zoning request change?
There could be, but I think we're wanting to get direction from the council, what is acceptable.
Okay.
It's very, very similar to your letter.
Pardon?
This is a very similar conversation of the letter, the economic development conversation that you started, which I'm feeling very similar in that we keep having these conversations and I don't know what the vision is here.
Okay.
Mayor? I'm
Sorry.
sorry, I just wanted to say, there is another new component that just added to this just today. Some of you will recall we worked with Griff Johnson on the Grove Commons development, which includes Walmart and the multifamily behind it. This piece, the Robinson piece, was originally intended to be a part of that development. And there were some things that happened with realtors that took it out. And now Griff has contacted us, says he now has contract on the Robinson property, and he would like to explore with the council what can be done, including potentially adding it into, as it was originally intended to be, with the other development. So he's a new, added in today component. We had already had the wheels set in motion from another applicant, but he is now adding to the discussion.
Makes sense. So there's a possibility it will head towards what it was originally going to be used for. Thank you. Any other questions on that?
So item 5 is our accessory apartments discussion where we'll, and I'm assuming this will spend the majority of our time. But when we last had the discussion, the council's given feedback to Ken on various issues that they would like to see addressed. Ken's put together a matrix that takes the council comments, he puts his comments to it, and then we'll have the discussion on what's acceptable and what's not as part of the new accessory apartment ordinance. So Ken's done a lot of work on that, there's some good information there, we'll have that discussion. And then the last item is our design review board. This is a little bit by way of information, we're just gonna go over, somebody asked about term limits and things like that. We'll get that in front of you and say, this is what the policy currently says. If we're okay, boom, we're okay, we just keep going. If there's some tweaks we wanna make, then we'll have that discussion next week.
Okay.
So that's our 3 items.
Thank you. Okay, Libby, anything? Okay. Ken?
Yeah, the long-awaited opening of the Thai cuisine restaurant on Center Street is coming. We did a final inspection of the building today and the grounds around it. It still has a few things that they need to correct and finish before they will be allowed to open, but their projected opening is January 15th. So we're looking forward to that.
Great.
And on a personal note, as I was standing up giving presentations on the earlier items tonight, I became for the 7th time a grandfather.
Congratulations. That's great. Anything else? All right.
Yeah, just a reminder that this Thursday is the annual Chamber of Commerce Awards Banquet, and there will be awards given for 6 different categories, and there will be 13 kind of award finalists and award winners that will be there to receive awards in the business community, educators of the year, community service, mayor's award, And so it's a really exciting time for the business community to be able to celebrate some of the amazing businesses and business people that are in the community. So anybody's welcome to attend. Tickets are $15 for the general public. And you can get tickets at POGrovechamber.org. And then, of course, the council is invited to attend. Just let me know, and we can make sure that you're on the guest list.
And what time is that at? Is it doTERRA, right?
It is at doTERRA. doTERRA is providing some free Aroma Touch hand therapy spa treatment prior to the event, beginning at 11:15, and then 11:45 is when the program and presentation will start. So 11:45 to 1 is the scheduled time.
And Mary's catering.
And Culinary Crafts is catering, and it's going to be spectacular.
Always memorable.
Anything else?
The beautification commission is searching for a few members. I sent out an email earlier today in the Parks and Recreation update, and I can't remember all the neighborhoods, but there's quite a few. So if you have any recommendations, pass those along to me or the mayor, and we'll get those interviews set up and move forward on that. So they have quite a workload this year with that water conservation plan that we approved last year. So
How many do we need?
I want to say 6.
Okay.
Are there any restrictions on who can serve in that capacity? Can like city employees serve on a board like that? Or are there any rules that I'm not aware of?
They have to be a resident, and we try to keep one member in each neighborhood, and that's been the challenge. So.
Thank you. Right? Good? Okay. No? Thanks. Sherry's not with us tonight. Denise? Scott?
I owe the council some updates. I'm gonna do this via email, on Hammond's, on our, city streaming, our meetings. We were also close to be ready to do that today, but we had a heart breakdown.
That's
and
good.
The TSSD settlement and, just some things that have happened there. So these are things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, and I'll just send an email for updates for it.
Okay. Thank you. Tina? Nothing? Dave? 2 blocks. Okay. Kathy?
Thank you for the reappointment.
Yes. It was expected, right?
I was hoping.
You're a master municipal.
Master.
How can we not?
Okay, Diana?
Nothing.
Okay, good.
I think we're good.
Oh, excuse me. That's it. Eric?
David took mine, so I'm good now.
Okay.
I think I'm good. I'm excited to be sitting next to Eric for the next year. I'm curious about whether we'll have new assignments on different, I don't know if you're going to talk about that in the moment or some kind of decision. But I'd love to hear an update on
So
that.
on that, I went through and created them. What I did was just shift everyone. Eric, you've kind of switched places with Jay's assignments, and I think we had agreed that Jay was gonna finish up the year with his. So whoever gets that next is gonna pick up those assignments, but you've got some new ones. And then Lynn will have some assignments for you. Okay.
I'm ready.
But everybody's gonna have something different than they've had before. If you see that you've already been there and you don't wanna do it again, just let me know and we'll adjust it. And then okay, anything else, Ben?
I think I'm good.
Obviously, I have a poll, and I don't know why, but I guess this is what happens when you figure out you can't get anything else done for New Year's because nobody wants to get anything done, so you just stop, let your guard down, and boom, on it comes. So we have signing of the plats, reviewing of the calendar. The offices are closed on the 18th. We pick up, the public safety building meetings will resume on Wednesday, tomorrow night at 7. Anyone is welcome to attend, council.
What is that? Say that again?
The Public Safety Building Committee. And what they'll be doing is, they've done as the council has asked. They've gone out for RFP on the architectural estimate costs, and they're now interviewing the three top contenders, and then they'll put forward a recommendation to the council on what you want to do as far as taking one of them.
Could we get an updated calendar of meetings for the new year and also of members? I know a couple have dropped off.
Right.
Could we get an updated list of
Sure.
those people and?
Yeah, we haven't added anybody new.
Right.
We anticipated that
That's
there
what
would be
makes it understand who's not.
Sure.
certified.
You bet. Kathy, could you do that for us? Thank you. Just continue on the Wednesday. We have a number of open positions on planning commission. I'm aware that there's been one recently with Board of Adjustment. We've also had some water board discussions. Scott and I have discussed, Lynn and I have discussed. Metro and
Metro water
and irrigation.
I wanna be on that one.
Yeah, water board, sorry.
I'll take that one.
Metropolitan water, and then the irrigation company. So, if you have candidates or people that you think would be good at that kind of thing, please send them the requests and then have them fill out the applications. I have them, and I'll circulate the ones that have been interviewed. There's a short list from last year that's still there, and there's some people from today that we've interviewed that might be able to serve. So if you have people that you know that would be good in those positions,
Are
please
these all
make
on the
that
city's
contact.
website, all of these? Or
Or
not?
just now,
Oh,
or just barely.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
this is the notice to
It's
please
the
get on
notice,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Thank you. Okay, I don't really have anything else. Does anybody have questions or things that I owe you? Okay. All right, so that takes care of next week's items. We have the signing of the plats, review the calendar. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks.
I better get one for people. Okay. After all this hubbub. Oh, I have a lot more than.